I'm a Dapr maintainer, and I'm going to show you quickly how to use Postman or gRPCurl / gRPC UI to invoke Dapr via gRPC. So let's get started. First and foremost, it's important that you have Dapr checked out locally on your machine, the Dapr repo, I should say, because we will need to refer to the protos, the proto buffer files, which are in the Dapr proto folder. Okay, so you have to check out the repo and you have to check out the branch of the version of Dapr that you intend to use. In this case, we're using 1.12, which is about to release, and that's the Dapr binary I will be launching for this as well. But in this case, we're using the 1.12 branch. So make sure you pick the right branch for the version of Dapr you intend to use. Okay, so let's get started with that. I will show you briefly. Here is my Dapr 1.12 on the left side. One thing we will need is to start up Dapr. So I'm starting it up here. I'm defining the gRPC port because we need to specify the port to use. We don't want to have a random one. It's easier if we specify it, so let's do 5000. And I'm just enabling all logging, but I'm not running an app alongside Dapr, so just starting it by itself. The logging is optional, but I'm just doing it so you can see what's happening. So let's go back here in Postman. So now we can do this. Notice that when you create a new request, by default it's probably HTTP, so you can change this to gRPC. So let's do that. We can already type localhost 5000 because that's the port I chose. And now we need to do something here. Reflection does not work for Dapr, so we have to import a proto file. If we import the proto file, start at your Dapr folder wherever you cloned the GitHub repo. Start there, and within that, go into the Dapr subfolder, then the proto folder. And the Dapr API is defined, the core API is defined in runtime, v1 dapr.proto. That's the one you have to import. And that has dependencies itself, other protos. So under import paths, let's say we don't have this defined, you would have to pick the Dapr root folder, the one that itself contains the Dapr proto subfolder. Okay, so now we can do next. Just import as API. The new API now will appear on the left. And you can see the proto appearing here and so on. And now we can go back to our request. We can pick a method. Now the methods populate here. And I'm just going to use an API which always works even without an app and everything, or without a component, which is the metadata API. So normally what we could do now is we can even say get an example message. The metadata API doesn't require any example, any parameters. So if I invoke it, I can now see it tells me some information about my running Dapr sidecar. And here in the logs, we can also see that the Dapr metadata API was invoked via gRPC. So this is working, and similarly, you can use the other APIs. So let's say publish event, you wanted to use that one. You use the example message and it shows you this, or save state. And you can fill this out and submit the requests accordingly. Okay, that's using curl. Using Postman. Using this other tool, gRPCURL and gRPCUI, I have installed these according to the instructions here. So let's assume they're installed, gRPCURL, gRPCUI, these repos that we are using. Now it's a bit more complicated. What we have to do is generate something called a proto-set file. And it's similar. I already prepared the command. Now, if you do not have proto-c installed, you can use homebrew, for instance, and install proto-buff. And in my case, that's already installed. And so now we have, let's see what version of proto-c we have, 24.3. So proto-c, and I am in the root of the Dapr folder, and that's important. And now we have to specify the proto path as this very folder, the Dapr folder. And the descriptor set out, that is the path of our output file, our proto-set file. And then we want to import the common proto, and it's a relative path. And finally, our entry point here is the main dapr.proto. This matches exactly what we did in Postman earlier. It's just generating a file manually. And so now we do that. And if we get the status here in the repo, we can see the Dapr proto set is our changed file. So now we can use gRPCUI. And one thing I have to say is that I'm using plain text because this is not a secure gRPC server that we're running in Dapr. So we have to use plain text, not SSL or TLS. We're specifying the proto set, which is this file, dapr.protoset, and then the host where our Dapr is running, our Dapr gRPC port is running right now. So when we do that, let's go back. I will open the URL this launches, and then that's how it looks. So similarly, we can also do the metadata API and invoke it, and we get the same response. Or let's say set metadata. And then you can, for instance, say set, hello, and let's set the value to world. And I think that's how it works. We can verify by using the get metadata API. And there it is under extended metadata, hello world. For fun, we can of course go back to Postman and run the same request there once it launches. And let's do the get metadata. How do I do this? Not save state, but get metadata. Oh yeah, this example we didn't run here actually, so sorry, get metadata. And we say see hello world here as well. And that concludes my little example. So hopefully that's useful for using Postman or gRPCurl, gRPCUI to query Dapr via gRPC. All right, thanks.